The wind cut sharp that afternoon, the kind of cold that slips through thin sweaters and settles into your bones, the kind that reminds you autumn doesn't always come gently. In the middle of the park, beneath a row of half-bare oak trees, a little girl sat on a wooden bench beside her mother, clutching a threadbare blanket tight around her shoulders like it was the only thing holding her together. Her cheeks were pink from the chill, her lips chapped, and her small voice trembled as she whispered something that pierced the quiet air like a broken note. "Are we bad people, Mama?" The woman beside her looked down, eyes glassy with tears she was fighting to hold back. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Before she could find the words, a man sitting a few benches away, holding a sandwich wrapped in brown paper, heard those 6 words, and his entire world seemed to stop. If you believe kindness still has the power to change lives, to heal broken hearts, and to rewrite the stories of people the world has forgotten, then stay with me for the next few minutes, because what happened next in that park will remind you that goodness still walks among us. And if it moves you like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe, because stories like this one deserve to be seen. Ethan Cole had only come to the park to eat his lunch in peace, 30 stolen minutes between shifts. A single father, he'd been working 2 jobs since his wife Claire passed away 2 years earlier, a car accident on a rainy November night that he still couldn't fully talk about. His whole life now revolved around his 7-year-old son Noah and the small, fragile moments they managed to share between school runs, double shifts, and bone-deep exhaustion. But watching the mother and daughter on the bench nearby, something stirred in him, something old and familiar. It reminded him of the nights Noah had asked, in that same small voice, if everything was going to be okay, and Ethan hadn't known how to answer either. The woman looked to be in her late 20s, though exhaustion had aged her face beyond her years. Her sweater had small holes worn near the sleeves. Her hair was tied back loosely, strands falling free, and her face carried the quiet, practiced strength of someone who had been holding on for far too long. The girl beside her, no older than 6, had wide blue eyes that still held on to hope, even though life had given her little reason to. Ethan didn't want to intrude, but he couldn't look away either. When the little girl asked again, louder this time, his chest tightened like a fist closing around his heart. "Are we bad people, Mama? Because nobody wants us anywhere." The mother's lips trembled as she pulled her daughter closer against the cold. "No, sweetheart," she said softly, forcing the words out. "We're just unlucky right now." She tried to smile, but her voice cracked right down the middle. Ethan's grip on his sandwich loosened. He had heard grief before. His own heart had wept for Claire more nights than he could count. But something about that small, trembling voice broke him open in a way he couldn't explain. He stood, and without fully deciding to, walked toward them. The mother stiffened when he approached, bracing for judgment the way people do when they've been judged too many times before. But Ethan's eyes carried nothing but concern. "Hi," he said gently, keeping his distance. "I couldn't help overhearing. Is everything all right?" She hesitated, then nodded too quickly. "We're fine, just resting for a while." But her eyes told a different story. Tired, scared, rimmed red. Ethan noticed the worn-out backpack at her feet, the half-eaten piece of bread in her daughter's small hand, and understood that resting wasn't the truth. He sat down on the far edge of the bench. "I'm Ethan," he said quietly. Then, turning to the girl with a small smile, "That's a nice blanket you've got there." The child, shy but curious, looked up at him and whispered, "It used to be my baby blanket. Mama says it's magic. It keeps me safe." "Then it's the best kind of magic there is," Ethan said. Her name, he learned, was Grace. Her daughter was Lily. Grace had lost her job 3 months earlier when the diner she waitressed at closed its doors for good. Her landlord had given her 2 weeks to leave, and with no family left to call, she and Lily had been living out of her car ever since. Last night, the car had finally broken down for good, stranded 2 blocks from the park. Now they had nowhere left to go. "I've been trying to find something, anything," Grace said, her voice trembling. "I just need one chance." Ethan felt his throat tighten. He thought of Noah, of how easily this could have been them if life had bent a different way. Without a word, he reached into his bag and offered her his sandwich. Grace shook her head. "We can't take that." "Yes, you can," he said gently. "It's just a sandwich. I can get another one." Lily's eyes lit up when her mother finally accepted it, breaking it carefully in half. She took a small bite and smiled like she'd been handed the whole world. That evening, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about them. After Noah went to bed, he sat by the window, remembering how neighbors had brought him casseroles after Claire died, how co-workers had quietly covered his shifts without being asked. He'd promised himself back then that someday he'd pay that kindness forward. Maybe this was the moment. The next morning, he returned to the park with a thermos of hot cocoa and breakfast sandwiches. Grace and Lily were there, huddled under the same tree, their faces lit up at the sight of him. He called a friend who managed a small cafe nearby, and by some quiet miracle there was an opening for a part-time waitress. When he told Grace, she hesitated. "You said you just needed one chance," he reminded her. "Take it." She walked into that cafe the next morning, gripping Lily's hand so tightly her knuckles went white. By the end of her first shift, she was smiling again for the first time in months. Weeks passed. Grace saved enough for a small apartment, and Ethan helped her move in box by box. Lily and Noah became inseparable, racing each other across the same park where it had all begun. One golden evening, watching Grace laugh freely with her daughter, Ethan felt tears rise without warning. Lily looked up at him and said, "Mr. Ethan, Mama says you're our angel." He smiled. "Maybe we're all just angels for someone else, Lily." That night, standing at her door, Grace said quietly, "You didn't have to help us." "But you did." "Why?" "Because once someone helped me when I thought I had nothing left," Ethan said. "And because your little girl reminded me what real strength looks like." Months later, Christmas lights glittered across town. The cafe had become Grace's second home, and on Christmas Eve, as snow began to fall, Ethan invited them to spend the evening with his family. Laughter filled his house again, full and warm, for the first time in years. After dinner, Grace sat beside him. "You changed our lives," she said. "You didn't even know us, but you gave us a reason to believe again." "You did that yourself," Ethan said. "All I did was listen." Later she whispered, "You know what Lily asked me today?" She said, "Mama, do you think we're bad people?" And I told her, "No, baby, we're just people who got lucky enough to meet someone good." Ethan smiled through tears. "Then maybe," he said softly, "we were always meant to find each other." If this story touched you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to believe in kindness again, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the beauty still left in humanity. Before you go, tell me in the comments, have you ever helped a stranger who ended up changing your life in return? Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness heals the deepest wounds.